Those words are so deeply comforting. Krishna tells us here out of pure compassion, God gives us everything that we can banish ignorance. And every gift or ability that we may have is only on loan from God. It's not from our own effort. That gift itself, Krishna says, is only a spark of God's infinite light, His grace. As Yoganandaji said, the spiritual path is 25% our effort, 25% the effort of the Guru on our behalf, 50% the grace of God. Swami Kriyananda describes God's grace as being like sunlight shining on the side of a building, and it's shining impersonally. God has no favorites. He loves all equally. Yoganandaji would say that God loves you just as much as He loves me. And if we want to receive that sunlight, we have to open the curtains of our window. We can keep ourselves out of the sun by closing our mental curtains. Grace is always there, shining as always, shining in our lives. But to receive that grace, we need to open ourselves to it. Our hearts especially need to be held open by love, by calmness, and by willingness, a willing spirit. Yoganandaji said that the greater the willingness, the greater the flow of energy, and the greater the willingness, the greater of God's flow, of the flow of God's grace. This means that if we want joy in our lives, we need to live with joy and not wait for joy to come to us. And if we want love, we need to give love to others, give love to God, and not wait to passively be loved by somebody else. 3 years ago, Grace manifested for all of us here in the form of this ashram, Guru Prem. And before that, we were looking for property for a teaching center that we could rent in Delhi. And it seemed rather an exercise in futility. Every place that seemed big enough, there was no way we could afford. Every place we could afford, there was no way it would be big enough. And yet we knew we couldn't just wait passively for something to drop in our laps. We had to be active. We had to be willing. And then at the same time pray to God that the right thing happen. And so only in that way can God's grace flow. We have to take the first step. And so we spent our days with property dealers looking at properties that were either impossibly small or impossibly expensive. But just the fact, I believe, that we were willing, that we were praying, that we were asking, at the same time as doing the very best we could, and in some way or other, God will make it right. As Krishna says here, God will supply our deficiencies if we do our best. There's a story of Moses, who was guided by God to lead the Israelites. And and all the while across the desert, all the while being chased by the Egyptian army. Then they came to the Red Sea, and there was no way to cross it. But God told Moses this is what they had to do, and so little by little step, and then another step, he started to step into the sea. And of course the sea parted, and the seabed was dry. They walked across the dry seabed. But it's like Moses opened his window to receive God's grace, to receive that sunlight. But he had to open the curtains first. He had to take one step after another and demonstrate his willingness. And when you see someone after a long time, it's easier to sort of see whatever changes there might be in that person. And I've been serving spiritually full-time for now some 45 years, and I've seen many. I recall when many of my friends first came on the spiritual path. And they, at that time, they seemed like very ordinary people, nothing superhuman. But now, going back to visit America, I see some of those same friends, and I see a transformation. I see a glow, a spiritual maturity, a tangible grace. Yoganandaji said about the spiritual path that, and our transformation in the path, he said, one day you won't even recognize yourself. And what did these people do? They simply persisted. They simply persisted day by day, doing what they could, doing their spiritual effort, affirmation, meditation, but more than anything, being willing to trust and receive God's grace, and having that faith that their deficiencies would be made up by Krishna. As Lahiri Mahashaya would say, Banat, Banat, Banjai. Little by little, day by day, we do our little bit until at last we reach the goal. And if we offer ourselves and we feel the presence of God, do our best, then God will do the rest. And instead of focusing on our faults or our deficiencies or our lack, if we feel more gratitude to God for making up, for fulfilling those deficiencies, then God's grace will surround us all the time and we'll feel it tangibly. Thank you.
God manifests himself as a particular quality of energy or individuality in each of us. And even though Yogananda said we've all been everything, we've all through our soul's evolution of reincarnation, he says sometimes it takes 1,000,000 lives to reach enlightenment. And he says through all those lives we've been murderers, we've been thieves, we've been mothers, we've been fathers, we've been sailors and pirates. And he said, and yet, with the particular individuality that God has given each of us, we play each of those roles differently. And we play them as we are. It's sort of like sun coming in a stained glass window. Light is coming in, but it comes in so many different colors and so many different prisms and ways. And each light that comes through is his manifestation, even though all of those little specks of light look different. And so you think back on where can we think, this satsang is titled A Flow of Grace. Where can we see clearly where grace has been flowing? I mean, of course, we see that through our masters and the great saints of India and of course, all over the world. And then you also look through history. Ramanujan was a channel of that grace. All the great composers, Mozart was able to write an entire orchestra piece for every single instrument in the orchestra all at one time and never change a note. I mean, it just came to him. Einstein received the theory of relativity in a flash, and then it took him like 10 years to write it down. Yogananda, he came to bring self-realization and meditation and Kriya Yoga to the West. He was flowing with God's grace. Swamiji was able to write 100 books, 400 pieces of music, start communities, do all these things. He was open to a flow of grace. You think of Alexander Bell and the telephone, the Wright brothers, the airplanes, Thomas Edison, the light bulb. You think of all of these souls who were able to bring divine consciousness into the material plane. What did they have in common? They had a vision, they had intuition, they had the energy and the discipline and the willingness to follow through and stick with it. And then they were able to manifest it on the material plane. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is it that's supposed to flow through us? How is grace supposed to flow through me? How is God supposed to manifest through me? Because we don't have to be mistaken and think that God really wants us to do something. He's not sitting there saying, when are they going to do it? When are they going to do it? He doesn't care so much. And when we ask, what am I supposed to do? What is my next step? What is supposed to flow through me? We have to ask now, in the moment, not what was supposed to flow through me 10 years ago or even last year. When we ask this question, we need to be clear, still-minded, gazing up, intuitive, and we need to put the energy in motion that will at least enable us to take the first few steps and then allow the lessons that we need to learn to flow through us and the quality of energy that needs to flow through us that will enable us to transcend our egos. All of that will look different from each of us, but the quality of energy that needs to flow through me, allow me to transcend my ego and understand what is the purpose of my life? Why was I born? And we have to put out the self-effort to ask God, what's the answer to that question? And just like Yogananda taught us in meditation, we can't get that just through willingness and self-effort. His teachings of meditation is that we do the techniques and we calm our breath, we still our mind, we open our heart, and then we are in the position to receive that grace. But it's always self-effort and grace. It's always techniques and open to God coming to us, both, but never alone. Swamiji just uses it as an example. If we know that God is going to come to us by the front door, why would we wait by the back door? So we have to do everything to prepare ourselves to be able to wait by the front door. These are the things we need to do, to open ourselves to the flow of grace that is waiting to come in. If we have that vision, that intuition, that clarity, we're asking the question, and then we're willing to put out the energy and invite God's power to flow through us. Yogananda said, my own power, my own but God's power.
God-given power.
My own but God-given power flow through me. So we put out the energy, but as we put out the energy and the willpower to generate that grace to flow through us, then we invite him in and ask him. Swamiji made lots of tapes and talks about how he was able to write certain songs. He said, this song wrote itself. He just opened himself and the song came through. But he had a clear vision of what he was looking for. He said, I need a song that was about Russia in this particular time that's going to give this sense of duty and joy. And he would just pick up the pencil and put it on the paper and it would come. So he would have the clarity and he would put it into motion. So just this week we had a center assistance training here with groups from Pune, from Gurgaon, from Noida, from West Delhi, from Chennai, and we all got together and shared what we were doing in each of our centers to help manifest divine consciousness on this planet. What were all the different things that we were doing? And it was the most inspiring thing. It was a flow of grace that had happened here in this temple. In the first place, it was supposed to be happening in Gurgaon. At the last minute it got changed here, which allowed 10 of our people to come to that meeting. And we were all so filled with joy. And I think people were so open to thinking, what is my next step? How can I allow the divine to flow through me? This is how it's flowing through in Pune. This is how it's flowing through in Chennai. And it was so exciting to see all the different areas that we are not yet doing here. And so people stepped up from here and said, yes, I'll take that on. Suddenly, Keshava and I don't have to worry about the finances anymore. Pankaj and Dolly and Hari and Dimple are going to be the finance team, and they're going to do all of the complicated reporting that a nonprofit needs to do with the CA and with the government. And so suddenly that's a huge burden off our shoulders. And somebody stepped forward and said they're going to work on the family ministry to bring more families here, and on supporting memberships, on how we support the ashram. And so many people stepped forward, and Keshava and I were also so filled with joy that just by God's grace, these things could just happen to us like this. That just suddenly it was in this temple and all of this was happening. So, really, we are spiritual beings. We are not physical beings. And we will never be happy just trying to manifest material things. In a spiritual environment like that, it's all very easy to agree and for everybody to say, yes, yes, our life is about manifesting divine consciousness on earth. And we all agree with that here. And then we all go home, and what do we do all week long? We try to manifest money. And that's often what so much of our lives is about, is just how can I manifest security or money or comfort or, but really we will never really be happy just doing that. We will only be happy if we are channels of manifesting the causal plane, which is vision, ideas, God's thoughts, and God's energy and light and love and joy on the astral plane, all of these energies, bringing them down into manifestation. That's when we will find our purpose. And we have to ask ourselves, what part of that needs to come through me? Why was I born? What's trying to happen? We always need to ask that question. And Christ had, said obviously so many wise, truthful things, but one thing he said is, knock, and the door shall be opened unto you. Ask, and you shall receive. So let's ask God, what's trying to flow through me? How can I manifest more light, more love, more joy, more wisdom? Here at the Sangha, with each other, in my family, in my job. God, please guide me, flow through me. Let me put out the energy, even if I don't know what it looks like. Let me take some steps in a particular direction. put that my own willpower into motion, invite God's grace to flow through me and help me do whatever direction it starts to send me. I will reason, I will, I will act, Yogananda said, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right path in everything. And the divine has no choice but to flow through us. God bless you. Stand and have the arati.